selling. People want to be talked to. They want to be loved. They want to feel like part of your show. And that was so many of us. We had an audience all our life.
One of the things about setting the table for flow is you got to have your mind set up right. And I think if you can't sort of empty your mind a little bit ahead of the event or the process, it's gonna get in the way a little bit.
If there's an expectation, expect the unexpected, because that's what it comes in. It doesn't come because you demanded it to be so. It's funny, one of those things. The big pressure gigs are the ones that you want to do your best at. I'll give you an example. Telluride. And I've talked to many musicians. We all play Telluride, and we all want to just hit a home run. We just want to have the best set we've ever had, and very few of us do. I find, speaking for myself and others I've talked to, and it's funny, then you'll do this little basement gig somewhere that doesn't, quote, matter in the world of career and business and whatever, and then it's all there. It's all there. So you have to be able to expect and accept both,
Maybe we put aside some preoccupation of our mind and let the flow happen.
What's really amazing to me, though, is you think about creative ideas and really genius moments in history, and often with science, and it can be with music as well. But it's like two people in different parts of the world will come up with the same idea simultaneously.
Paul Overstreet calls me and says, "Oh, Billy, you're singing my song," because I knew Paul. We were kind of hanging out with the Dr. Hook office in those days. He was writing for them. And he said, "Man, I'm writing a song. What about you?" He said, "Yeah, I've got a song going too right now." So both of us compared our lyrics, and we were almost writing identically the same song. And that was, to me, that was proof to me there's sort of a sprinkling of energy or that songwriting angel or whatever. I don't know what you would want to call that, but it's in the air. You've heard about music being in the air. And I firmly believe from that one time that there's something going on. And so he and I said, "Man, I'm coming up to your house. Let's finish this song." And we did write it together. It's called Lonesome for You is the name of the song.
I definitely have telepathic moments with people that I play music with a lot. And what I'm saying is that playing a lot of music with these people connects us. And so even if we're just driving in a car or not playing music together, we often have the same thoughts at the same time. And definitely there is like a feel and a connection and an intuition when you're playing with people. And
if you're with the right people, somebody will cover you. They'll hear that they'll hear the other person fixing to be played into a corner, and they'll take over and help you out, and keeping it moving,
I've had times where you were asking about Nathan. When we used to live together, there was a few times where I would think a song lyric in my head, and he would finish the lyric out loud.
And it's almost like we can read each other's minds,
I don't know how that works, but it's definitely something that's out there.
I don't know what to make of it, but it happens,
Well, you can't plan for that kind of thing. The stream of consciousness, or that clicking thing with another musician, or for that matter, with an audience. It either happens or it doesn't.
It first happens when you have people who are all on the same page musically, I think.
Well, see, to me, that's kind of interesting because I have a twin brother, and we could finish each other's sentences, growing up, or we could both get the same random idea at the same time, stuff like that. So to me, it's just totally natural. I don't think twice about it because that was a common occurrence. But the moments, especially musically, the moments when everyone comes together like that, that connection is pretty amazing. When something happens that's never happened and was never talked about or pre-planned, and everybody happened to do it.
Partly depends on, I don't know what to say, I guess the respect or the understanding the musicians have for each other, and the desire to, first you have to realize that it's possible. It's not just you up there doing what you do and somebody else doing what they do. You have to realize that it can be greater than that.
When we're playing and we're just making stuff up, beginning, it was like almost eerie that he'd start playing something and it was the same thing I had in my head. And so I'd know exactly what chords to play somehow.
We don't know why or how. We had that dream about all that crazy stuff, and that happens with the music.
What was that dream that I had? Oh yeah, this weird thing happened and this happened, and then a half hour goes by. What was that dream?
State when you play that's unlike right now. That is almost dreamlike, you know, and I don't know, I have no clue how, I almost always expect that not to happen, and then it happens, you know. Someone will kick off a tune, I don't even know what the tune's going to be, or da-da-da. I'm worried I don't know where any notes are, I don't know how to play. Every time I pick up, I feel like I don't know how to play, and then something comes through you, you know, where suddenly you can't look for ideas or think about them, or you're way too late. I see people think about rhythm. Well, it's not a reaction, it's really interact. You know, it's right then and there. If you think about it, it's not going to work.
I think that any creative effort, especially anything musical, being relaxed, being confident, and being prepared is like 99%.
I've got guitars, pianos, mandolins, whatever sitting around me. Will I write a song today? I don't know. They're here in case I did or wanted to, but it doesn't mean there's going to be one written today. So there's a readiness that's part of the, you know, getting ready for the magic, but not exactly having an expectation about the magic happening. I think as soon as the expectation comes in, suddenly it's turned from the potential of a magic happening, as opposed to turned into a strategic happening, you know, like you've planned one. And sometimes those planned ones don't exactly come out like you planned. So the way I figured is you have to be as willing to accept, wow, that was a magical night, or a magical take, or a magical morning I had writing that song, or whatever. And you have to be as willing to accept that was not magical. That was not a magical gathering. That was, you know, because you have to be willing to take both. It's not just one-sided, like it's all the good stuff only. And to me, it's to not get so bought into the expectation of it.
Sometimes it's a thought about someone or a subject or a... It's different every time. People always ask me, you know, how do you do? Will you get the idea first? It's different every time. I never had one the same, I don't think, you know. Aside from the old music roll, sitting in a room, come up with, you know, guys walk in and they have an entire page of hook lines, you know. The bluest of the blue, you know, and just, which one you like, which one you like. And at that point it becomes like, well, okay, let's go with the bluest of the blue, okay. And then it just becomes an exercise.
Usually I get creative after a phase, after the Grisman Band. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff, you know, right after I spent 3 or 4 years with a certain group locked in and that's all I do. I usually digest whatever just happened and a bunch of my own material comes out.
Especially if I've had a really good time at a music festival or something, I'll come home and just all this stuff will come out of me.
I think we're very busy with our daily activities, and we think that we don't have time to be creative. We don't have time to set ourselves like an hour a week to go and do something just for us, alone with ourselves and our child that we need to nurture, our creative child. So, but I think it's important not to take for granted that during many daily processes that we do, that we actually slip into a meditation where we're able to break through to the other side. And a lot of people, like artists or musicians, will tell you, like, when they're driving, they get the best ideas, so they keep a notebook by them, which is dangerously fun. Or you know, I feel that way, like, especially when I'm driving.
It's not the fact that I'm at one place, particular place in the road, it's that my mind has gone to this relaxed state while I'm driving, that I'm not conscious of anything, and I'm not really thinking about anything, and it's almost that relaxed state turns on the valve somehow. And a melody will come, or lyrics will come, and there's no, most of the time with those, it's not like I'm trying to think, I'm going to write a song, or it's just there.
Some line will come into me, and I'll literally, if I'm just driving alone in my car, I'll be like, I am one of those, you know, and I just start singing to myself, and I can't, and I just start singing on repeat, and I think it's best that I'm alone. And then hopefully I'll either get my phone out and sing into it to try to capture that thing that's happening inside me, or I'll miss it.
You know, how many great songs have been written by some guy sitting down at a desk with a pad or maybe a typewriter and a hot cup of coffee and a freshly lit cigarette, and all right, I'm going to sit down and write a song. And honestly, there have been a lot of, you know, greatly popular and, you know, big smash hit songs written that way. The Brill Building writers in the 60s and the guys on, you know, Music Row today, they're definitely skilled at that. But I think you can feel the difference between somebody writing because they've made an appointment to write a song today at exactly 12:30 until 2:30 and then break for lunch. The difference between that and say when somebody is maybe just driving in their car, which is a very inspiring place for me, and I think a lot of people, because your scenery is constantly changing and there's that sense of movement and going somewhere, and just something just hits you, just like you get struck with a little bit of inspiration, like maybe it's the sound of the squeaky belt in your car going and then you start humming something and tapping, and then your turn signal and you know, pretty much you got a band ready to play behind your song idea, and you end up, you know, the band being your car, and then you end up, you know, grabbing a receipt on the ground or a napkin or whatever you have, and like trying to find a pen, and it doesn't work, and you're looking at it and you're in traffic and you're at the red light, and then you just start scribbling down. I think there's probably been more great songs songs that are great because they're songs written that way than the other way, with the guy with the nice hot cup of coffee, which would be really good right now, but you know, that's a whole other story.
Also when I'm cooking and just chopping vegetables.
Vacuuming tends to bring out songs.
Just singing a tune in the shower.
Taking a shower is another one. Whenever you can let your mind stop and you can do one task and focus on that task without thinking too much about other things, you go into a meditative state, which is a great place to take a hold of your creativity and let it pass through you, flow through you.
When ideas come to you is when there's nothing else going on. Your mind is not occupied with a million different things. However, there's still creativity that happens for me when I force myself to practice and just to play, and maybe it's just a fingering pattern or a scale or a sound that I like the way it feels, and so you start fooling around with it, and then as you fool around with it, it starts to go a certain direction, and if you have the time to chase that, you know, sometimes it will become something.
I have to write something really good every single time. Well, no, I don't. Every solo doesn't have to be amazing every single time. It's not going to be. And I wait for that magic to happen. You know, as far as songs, for example, I just don't go over to these instruments unless I'm drawn to them, you know. I guess I could be cooking something like I'm going to cook tonight, or checking out stuff on the internet, or whatever I do. But I don't put myself in the position of a blank page very often. A blank page is not a cool place to be, you know, to me. I want to go to the page when I have something to say, and when I don't give me a blank page.
And also, you know, we have to reach a point of frustration sometimes to break through, because the one side of our brain is cognitively thinking about everything all the time, that judges, that tells you what you need to do and tells you how you need to succeed and be more and get more and do more. that part judges and is always telling us, that's impossible, you can't do that. If we can get past that, we can break into our creative mind, the other side of the brain. So how do we break through that? Sometimes I think it takes coming to some point of frustration or climax in order to get to that other side. Because it's always there for you waiting, but you have to push everything else out of the way.
You know, following the muse, I guess you'd call it, you know.
It's hard to know when to like leave something.
You know, how does somebody know that a song is finished?
I have to stop myself from constantly going back and reworking things. I have to just be like, okay, Amanda, stop. Because lots of times I'll just revise this stupid thing so many times that I'll go back to the original and be like, oh, okay, I just needed to leave it like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
If I have a bad mistake, is that I think it's finished long before it's finished. And because of that, I will sing a song just out of personal challenge that I don't really know how to sing, and I just hope the audience don't know that.
I always seem to do things in like blocks of energy. Like if it's mixed media artwork stuff, it seems like I'll work on that for like a week or a month or some like amount of time, and then I won't do it for like a year or a long time, you know. And songwriting's kind of like that for me too, where I'll have like a few songs come out at once and then maybe nothing for a long time. So now that I've been able to recognize when that happens, it's like you really appreciate it because it doesn't happen every day.
It kind of comes in waves.
Nowadays they got so many microphones. They put, like if you have a 15-piece band, just say if and you did. They got 15 microphones and everybody stood right in front of it. And they didn't move because then they couldn't be heard. But if you had two, they'd have to learn to move in and out, you know, like, that's the way you had one. And Scott would say, now get in that microphone and get out. He said, when you get in there, let them know, you know, be forceful, like, just, you know, the other step back. That's the way it is with the family.
Yeah.
You never know when a king is walking among you. He may have humble garments.
Oh, songlines. Songlines, because of the song, got my attention. It's walking where your great-grandfather or his great-grandfather walked, and you're able to sing the same song as he sung while he walked that. And they gave this, they were saying that this guy was telling this story, and they told the story at the same rate at which they walked. So that when they went, put him in the back of a Jeep, he was going too fast to say the words, so he was all messed up, so they had to go back and let him walk that and record him and have him say what he wanted to say as he walked, because it had been done that way all along. And in order to save time, you put him in a Jeep to take him to someplace they wanted to go, and wanted to record him while he was riding in that Jeep, and he started talking so fast that he couldn't, I can't do it.
If you don't feel comfortable, you filter yourself, and sometimes, you know, you have to get bad ideas out first, and then the good ideas are hiding behind them. But if you don't feel comfortable, then you won't, you know, you hold on to something that maybe is a good idea, and you're just self-conscious about it.
When I start trying and it's over, man. I can't play. So, definitely.
So I guess the perfect creative environment would be where you didn't feel inhibited, where you're not, like, I guess, in a playing situation, somewhere where you're not thinking, if I mess up, someone's going to hear it, and they're going to judge me, they're going to think I suck, and you get that part of your brain spinning, going, well, I guess I'll just try not to play any wrong notes, and then maybe you don't play anything great, because you're afraid of playing something wrong. And that would be, the complete opposite would be the ultimate creative situation, where you just felt comfortable, and you didn't feel like anybody was, like, critiquing you. I guess.
Well, when I think about flow, I think about not editing yourself while you're playing. So, like, if you're playing and you're going, oh, that was terrible, why did I have to play that note? It's a completely useless reaction in the flow. You know what I'm saying? So you actually have to forgive yourself the moment you start playing and stop thinking in such a critical fashion.
The editor has no place at all in when a work is just being started. By that I mean when the inspiration is going. Inspiration is the thing that would take me out of whatever I'm doing in this house and lead me to that piano or a guitar or something over there and just say something's going on. Something's going on. That melody, something that I've been feeling for a few days, something that's going on in my, my life with my kids or my love or what's going on in the world politically or something that's bothering me and is taking me over to an instrument or that pad of paper thing. Now the inspiration is there. The editor has no place in the inspirational party. He's an absolute unwelcome guest. He will blow the party.
The times whenever I have been the most creative are when I've just said, okay, today I'm not going to listen to the editor. I'm not going to make a judgment call on whatever the phrase is. I'm going to just play it and say, okay, well, this is good. David Greer sort of jokingly said one time that it wasn't that there were any bad tunes, it's just that people's versions of tunes were bad,
These young people has got to stop playing for their self. They got to start playing for that audience. You don't count. You're out there to entertain that audience, and they come first. Now, that's the way we were raised. Daddy taught us that. And he said, no matter how bad of a place it is, no matter how bad, terrible bad, he said, always pretend it's the best auditorium in the world. Some of these young folks, and it's good to get education, because I believe in it 100% as a foundation to your life and to your job. But sometimes you can get overdone. You can get overeducated, and then you don't know how to communicate with everybody around you. Now that could be, and a lot of the young people are smarter than they ever been. And that's good in a way and bad in another, because they don't socialize. Now they have the computers, and you see everybody sitting there, nobody talks to each other. Nobody laughs, they're too busy doing this, or texting, or whatever they do, and they don't know what's going on around them. They get on the stage and they think they're great. But Daddy used to say, Dad, blame it, no matter how good you are, how good you think you are, somebody's better. They may not have come out of them hills yet, but by golly, they'll be better. That's what he used to tell us. And Scott would say, nobody can beat me, Pop. A lot of young people have been in school so long, and everything is so uptight. They want to do it just right, and they want to do this so just right. Instead of have fun, it'll turn out all right. And if you mess up, that's part of being great.
A lot of it has to do with experience, I think. You grow up around the music and who you meet and interact with, and, you progress and develop. I think, one thing that's gone away, I don't want to be one of these old guys belly aching about stuff, but that mentorship thing, which is kind of what we're talking about, it's kind of gone away. And so there's current bands out there in every genre, I'm sure. They never had to pass the test, to sink or swim, throw them in the deep end. If they can swim to the other end and crawl out, okay, I'll start to work with you. But they're obviously smart people, and they can, I don't know if they're learning music like video games, like real individualistic, and this will sound like an old guy talking, but a lot of jumping around, making up for the fact that you really can't play that well.
When you talk about everyday stuff, sometimes you feel like you're even judging yourself for that. Well, that's stupid. Well, I don't want to say that. Well, who cares about that? And I'm not going to let myself think about that. But it's really important to get that stuff out. Otherwise, it's just, they're just building blocks from you and your creative self. It's the separation that we start to believe in when we think that we are a separate entity from the creative force, and that we're not the same thing.
A lot of times when you clear all of that out, you know, the clarity comes, the truth comes underneath that stuff.
I think the way we should probably do it is try to, once we do feel that spark of something that feels worthy of a song and we want to go there, it's kind of like catching a wave, you know. You catch that wave and ride it and just spit out all the thoughts and the emotions and the feelings you can while the wave, and ride it all the way to shore until the wave is gone. And then turn around and see what you've got, gather it up, piece it together and tweak it and shape it, but don't worry about it while you're on the ride.
Once the inspiration is played, it's what it's going to do. And inspiration doesn't stay around forever or for long. So the inspiration that might take me over to the piano is going to be there for a while, and then it will leave. It just will. Editing is what can happen after the inspiration has left the room. And then it's a welcome guest. It's like, I need you. It's not like, before I didn't need you and you were going to ruin things as the editor. Right now I need you. So then you have one verse and a chorus, let's say, if it's a song thing. And you love what you got. You got a verse and chorus that you just love. Now what? The inspiration left the building, and you're here with a verse and a chorus that you like. Now what? And that's where the editor can come in and say, and start helping, like, well, if that's what the first verse says and that's what the chorus says, how about, bang, this as where we go with the second verse? Okay. And then you go on that for a while, and inspiration can come back in after that point. The editor is the kind of thing that's supposed to stay away until there's a use for the editor. Otherwise, the editor can, our editors can look like everything from, geez, my girlfriend's going to like this, or so-and-so's going to record this one, or I better not say this because it's about my mom and she will hate that I'm writing this about her. Or my ex-wife is going to know this is about her, and I can't say this about her. Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. You know what I mean? You can say anything you want. The editor doesn't need to be part of the writing process. If the editor would stop the songwriter from writing, man, he's in the wrong place. So what I've learned to do is keep the editor at bay. In a loving but firm way. You know, and stay with the song and stay with the inspiration as long as it's here in the room with me. And then welcome the editor in, because the editor takes, in essence, the raw material. And through, how do we become an editor? It's because we've heard a million songs. It's because we've heard all the great stuff. You know, we've heard all kinds of great stuff, and that's all up here as in editing form. You know, how did the Beatles get out of this kind of song? What did Joni Mitchell do in this kind of song? You know, what did Bill Monroe do with this kind of thing? What did Hartford do? And if we've listened, as we have, and heard thousands of songs, we have some editing library cataloged up there to help us figure it out.
It's kind of weird. Like, that's for me. You never know when it's gonna hit. When you get an idea, and it's sort of like a door unlocks, and all of a sudden you see a picture there that you hadn't seen before. It's organized in a way you hadn't been been able to organize it. And I know that I'm always working on observing things and trying to learn. And then every once in a while I find a thing that kind of puts it all together, a way in. And it's like I say, like a door opens, and then I can just kind of go there.
There's that moment, when you see something amazing, where your breath goes away for a second. Whoa.
And, the good writers and artists, I suppose, scientists that are inventing things, or discovering things, they probably just look at it. I've heard stories about them being at a stoplight, and then just all of a sudden they realize the connections between things.
Sometimes when you're stressing about being creative or just coming up with solutions, creative solutions, the way you attack it is just to work incessantly. And that's not actually how it works. A lot of the most creative ideas come from the left side of the brain. They can come out somewhere out of nowhere.
Most of the times when you're thinking about something too hard, it doesn't come. It just won't happen because you can't push the river.
It's not there to push.
And so if you're constantly attacking the problems, you don't allow that idea to come in out of nowhere. So a lot of jazz musicians I know, they don't like to do sound check, they don't like to practice before they play. They want to be wide open so things can come in out of nowhere. Their inner process can be going all day.
It's random. But because they've worked at observing, they're able to put something together. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into fleshing out creativity, that's all I'm saying. It's not just, it doesn't just come fully formed. I think it does show itself, some sort of beautiful thing or true thing shows itself to you, and you can do your best to describe it. And it's like when you're finally ready to see the sunset and enjoy the colors in it. A lot of days go by, you just look over and see it and go, oh yeah, I got to go and do something. But when you're finally ready to look at that, then you see all this beauty in it, and that's kind of what creativity is, when you're finally ready to notice things, I guess.
Too much focus on the goal and not enough focus on the act of getting there. It can often get in the way, that striving kind of thing where you're sort of skipping the present and way out here,
It sounds kind of cliche, but I do like, the path there just as much as the destination, but it's really, it gives me purpose in my life to be creative and be creating art, and having found a community and a particular genre and outlet in which to do it. I mean, there were some times when I was younger when I knew I had a lot of creative potential, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be doing, and I tried all sorts of things, and it was kind of depressing not finding exactly what I wanted to do. But then once I found a more focused community of artists and a specific realm in which to work, it's just really been about the journey and about getting better and getting good criticism and making my own stuff, as well as interpreting other people's art that I admire.
Sometimes I feel like I've had so much opportunity that I need to not let up. I need to make sure and be worthy of it. And so that's why a lot of times I keep thinking about, what can I do that hasn't been done, that I haven't done? How can I fulfill the promise and not just sort of stop here? And it has its price. Sometimes I'm just exhausted. I'm just tired. I just want some time off, but I've set myself up with things to do right now that I have to go do, that I can't let myself off because I'm going to show up and there's an audience waiting to hear it. And I keep using those things to propel me.
Part of what makes me keep going on the live world is I know it's going to be different every time,
Dale's music's great. I mean, the environmental tunes for Florida are just super. But Dale never plays the same song twice, the same way. It's always different. I've gone and rehearsed with him to go do a festival, and he'll do the same tunes, but they're not the tunes we practiced. They're totally different. I love Dale, and Dale's a challenge to pick with. And you're right, you kind of have to anticipate Dale, but I think after years, you've played with Dale, you're mom and dad have played with Dale, and they all anticipate kind of, I think whatever Dale's mood is where he's going to go. And that's what I always listen for. The mood that he's playing is pretty much telling me, okay, he's going to go way off this time. And he's not going to the 4, he's going to go to the 5, or he's going to go to the 2, or, you know what, he just changed the whole key to the song. So, and that's just Dale. And I find that exciting. When you don't know what's coming, and you're going to try and fill a hole, to me, that's just fun. Big fun.
You will find your mind opening up. One thing I have experienced recently is ayahuasca. Did I tell you about ayahuasca?
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean, ridiculously different, but, I've done songs where I'm reciting them. I recite the song instead of singing it. I've never done that before, but it felt good tonight. I'm not going to do it tomorrow night. I may play it in a different key tomorrow night. It was a 3/4 tonight. I might do it in 4/4 tomorrow. The venue has a great piano. Shoot, tonight I'm going to play it on piano. But tomorrow I have a bouzouki because and so I just kind of float around and looking. What I'm doing is trying to be in the experience every single time. The song deserves that. The people deserve that, and honestly, so do I. As the participant in it, I don't want to sit around and basically play the same thing over and over in the same way. I just don't want to do that. It doesn't even interest me at all.
I kind of like music that's really alive and not, be sure to play those 2 notes right there every time. It's like, oh, okay, great, because you can play a variation of that. Whatever worked, you're going to kind of repeat it again. You don't want to turn it into a caricature of itself. I don't, but I know that's the job sometimes. You want something to sound like the record. But I think with that early band, things that worked, we noticed that's nice, let's do it again, whether we said it or not. And of course, it was David's band, so, hey, we're going to have, the music had us, there's 2 kinds of arrangement, the structure and then what you fill it in with, right? So of course there's special blowing sections, there's an intro, there's an ending, during a fiddle solo we're going to go into this 1 chord and whatever and see what happens. And, all that structure is going to be there like a blueprint. But the detail work, hopefully that's fresh every time,
There's no days off with creativity, with what's pounding in your heart. Your heart doesn't take a day off. So there's no, it's that same pulse.
Because sometimes you need some kind of rigidness in there with your creative flow, because otherwise you might never arrive at something that's like a full product,
By getting into that practice of doing it regularly, I feel like we enable ourselves to experience inspiration more often when you don't expect it.
It's like running. You go out and run 10 or 15 miles, you kind of get those endorphins going. And you have music endorphins.
By doing it on a regular basis, I think that, maybe you're making more connections in your mind that enable you, when the inspiration does hit, it's easier for you to create something, something good.
I don't know that I've ever written anything from having been drunk. The influence of whiskey might have contaminated my mind, but there are other medicines that help me to see creativity in a more 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional sort of way. Maybe when we can't get in the place where the lyrics speak to you in their purest form, we try to create that with some mind alteration, whether it's experiential or medicine or a upper or psychedelic or whatever, that we feel this need to get more than we're able to get in our mind without the physical exposure to something.
I sort of have a psychedelic experience when I'm alone in nature without help of anything.
Psychedelically, oh my goodness. Opens up a can of worms.
If there's one thing you can glean about, from psychedelics and transfer over to your creative process, it would be, there's no one way to do anything, and there's a million answers to, any given question. And that could factor into your creative process. Absolutely.
I get so caught up in watching cloud formations, and like right now we're out here and I'm looking behind you, and here's a sycamore and all these oaks and maples, and they're all moving in different ways, and it's like this dance, and there are the clouds going up there and the blue coming through, and watching that, observing that kind of stuff tends to generate creative ideas.
I learned that if I would go out in nature, I could come up with ideas that would be diverse. If I'm sitting on a stump in the woods, surrounded by nothing but nature, no man-made object, I think that I feed on the words that come to mind and look for the different ones that would kind of rhyme or finish the sentence idea. And I'm doing that when I'm not seeing anything that's man-made. No fence post, no barbed wire, no beer can on the ground. I'm looking at nothing but surrounded and immersed by a wetland scene of a cypress swamp flooded with Spanish moss in the trees and that kind of thing. And when now I see slides with those things in it, or turn through a beautiful book of photographs and I find a beautiful scene that I know and identify with, I've been there personally. It hadn't been in a movie, it's been that I walked through that area. I think I can write songs about that at that point. But if I'd never been there to begin with, I don't think I would have the physical touch that I want the song to be. I want to know that the song came from that day I was over there with my guitar and sitting on a log, and I thought of that line and came up with it. And then I feel like I can present to my song from an authentic platform of experience that happened to me when I wrote the song. And I've thought about this geographical songwriting. I went to Australia once thinking that I would go over there and look for those song lines that those aboriginal people apparently know from generation to generation over a period of, say, 50 generations, the same information that comes from the land. They call them song lines. So I was going to go over there and try to be an aboriginal shaman walking through Australian scenery, and with a little tape recorder that I could record whatever came to me from that. And I don't know that I ever completed the song. But I did write some pieces of songs about that experience. It was hard for me to just think, I'm a shaman now, and I'm walking through this land, and I'm supposed to be writing songs that's coming to my mind as song lines, and I've got the recorder to get them, but I just never did really complete anything. But maybe the next time I go there, I will have benefited from that first experience to the point where I know that I can write one and just go ahead and complete it. If you think about it from that sense of the song line, music was, if you say that a song is a music, if that is all that your society is built upon. I mean, and they know those songs, they claim and know how to sing them because you're in the place where it was originated. And you might say that if that were applied to a form of music today, and I guess you could say bluegrass falls in that category, where it's more by ear than it is by eye, and it's like certainly more tonal than it is verbiage, and I think all of that, I got this from Peter the other day, all of that Bill Monroe high lonesome stuff has to be slow enough that you can get all of it in there, you know. You can't get it in there faster than your brain can appreciate it or your body can absorb it. And that, I guess you could say bluegrass or blues could be likened to song lines in that way, aboriginal song lines that most of the time it's about something in our environment. The longest hill I ever walked, or the dullest axe I ever chopped with, are things that had to do with stuff that was local and not imported from someplace else. It was generated from local stuff, and it died locally, I guess you can say, for a generation or two.
I don't know. You know, actually, death has been the biggest pointer for me for realizing your connection with that oneness, whatever you want to call it. I think because I had a big kind of time in my life, and it was actually started with we had a bunch of friends died, and my brother died, and it was like, and you know, grandparents and stuff like that, and so there's like this big, just one after another, just like people dying over and over. It's just like this constant like slaps in the face, you know, or you know, sometimes just like crushing blows, you know, and it's just like, but then when you still can feel those people around, you know, even though they're what they're riding around in is gone, you know, their body, it's like when you can still like palpably like feel them and, you know, sense their presence, it's as real as like you're sitting here. Like when you can feel that, then you start to kind of realize, okay, I think the veil is very thin, you know. What we're experiencing here is I think a pretty ephemeral sort of like thing, you know. It's not that real, you know, because everything here will be destroyed, you know. Anything you can touch, see, feel, or anything is going to go, you know, and including the sun, and you know, it's a star. It's going to blow up at some point. You know, probably not within our lifetimes, hopefully, but you know, if it does, that's the deal. What are you going to do about it? You know, but everything's going to go. Everyone's going to go, and so that was my lesson, or continues to be my lesson with getting in touch with what's behind that. You know, where do you go when you die? Well, the same place you were before you were born. You know, it's like that kind of matters isn't created or destroyed. It just shifts and changes. You know, it's like water turns into ice, turns into water, turns into vapor. You know, it's like, and some are more, you know, tangible than others. You know, you can't touch water vapor, but you can touch an ice cube, but then it'll change. You know, and so those people that I love have, you know, gone through those types of changes, and so that kind of taught me to. Well, when I still felt them around, you know, when their bodies left, it's like, oh, okay. Well, then there's something way deeper than just this little physical thing we're experiencing here. You know? So that was probably been my biggest teacher so far.
My buddy Guy Clark, you know, he's got a great story about that song of his called The Randall Knife, which is just a masterpiece. And he wrote that when his father died as a way of, the way he tells it, I mean, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but I've heard him tell his story a lot, and he was finding it hard to grieve, you know, and he was looking for a way to get this out. And he wrote that song, The Randall Knife, as a means of finding a way to deal with his grief. And he wrote it for himself for that reason and didn't intend to play it for anyone. But then, you know, his wife heard him playing it and said, "My God, that's wonderful. You got to share that with people." And he goes, "No, you know, I wrote." She goes, "No, you can't do that. You can't keep that to yourself." And now it's maybe his biggest most requested song, and it means so much to so many people. And he thought he was just writing it for himself, you know. So we're all just alike. You may be writing it for yourself, but there's a million other people out there who are just like you, feeling the same stuff, and it'll be for them too, you know.
There's been times that things has happened to me, like losing people, or losing people that were huge in, you know, the music world, people that I was close to, or people that I was enamored of, that I got this inkling that, well, this soul is passed over, you know, he's passed from the humanly realm, you know, and perhaps there's a lot of energy, a lot of musical energy or creative energy or something that maybe just got released into the, you know, into the cosmos.
Felt like I need to carry on these things from them.
My consciousness transported me here. And I'm very fortunate that, you know, that's happened. And so in this moment, and it'll go till I return to the well, and another unique manifestation comes along that draws from my energy. So you come back and you're there at the same time.
Seeing the birth of my kids was, both of them was an awesome thing where you felt like you were really part of a continuum and a mysterious, again, a mysterious endeavor, whatever this life that people live is, and the planet and everything. I don't know what it really is, what it's for, but you sort of see yourself in it, in a place that's timeless. And the same with death. Birth and death are sort of the borders of our experience.
We all live and die. Next one day you're happy and you're healthy, and the next minute you go, I hope my hand will work when I pick.
And we're in the middle of it watching this, and we realize we're being born and we're dying at the same time. There's not much between us and that little baby and that old person that's dying. And that, to me, birth and death are sort of supreme. They are great resets, sort of reboot the basic idea of life.
Well, I think the spirit has a lot to do with music. It has everything to do with it at its origins, and by that I mean origins of a song. So I go sit and work on a song, and we used the word inspiration a while ago. The word inspiration has the word spirit in it. So it has to be, spirit is part of the experience. It just is. It's there in the beginning, called inspiration. So the spirit, whatever that is, that's there when someone goes and works on a song or something, starts getting into the song. I mean, it's like in there. It's invisible, indelible part of it. You can't remove it from it in a way. If the spirit is in there, as when the guy or gal wrote it in a songwriting room or in their house, it's there when it's, a #1 hit. It's there when it's played around a fire ring, in Kerrville or something. It's there, at a concert. It's there when you're not even singing it. Somebody else is singing it, So that spirit, once it gets in there, it feels like it stays in there. It's like, there it is, it's recognizable. It's kind of off the subject, but part of that spirit is why a great song can take all sorts of dressings. So a great Hank Williams song can be done in a bluegrass way, a punk way, a country way, Tony Bennett way, all sorts of different sort of musical, costumery can go on the song, and the spirit of the song still stands up. I mean, we've heard a lot of ruination of songs too, but a great song can handle all sorts of dressings up. Part of that relates to because the spirit in it is so strong, because it's such a great song that it can handle the dressings, the different dressings. There's not just one way to do, a song, And so, I think spirit stuff stays, it's in there, it's in the song. And so even after the songwriter has written it, let's say somebody else is doing the song, now it's transformed from wherever that person wrote that song, so to speak, in it, to now, a bluegrass band is doing the song. And that spirit is still there, and that the dude who wrote it is dead for the last 30 years or something, you know what I mean? And it lives on. So there's something going on in there, and I think spirit is as good a word as any.
Well, I try to pay attention to the spirit in the sort of a common bond that all of us have, and the common experience of this mysterious life we lead. But I think mostly what artists do and creative people do is they organize things that in a way that people see things they already kind of know intuitively. They sort of see them in a concrete way or experience them in a concrete way briefly. And it's nothing new. It's never really anything new. It's more like it's something that's always been there, and we've sort of always known it's there, and then we stop, like I say, we're finally able to appreciate that sunset, or the way that flower looks, or the way that stream moves, or the way that string sounds, and the way that situation is in your life, if it's a lyrical thing with words. You know, in the songs, as a songwriter, you're mixing media, you're mixing sound and rhythm, harmony with poetry in some way. And you know, some of the writers write stuff that you don't understand, is really not necessarily meant to be concretely defined, and it's just a way of taking people away. We kind of, one thing that's interesting about human beings is they like this stuff. They like to see somebody's idea of organizing these things as a pastime, as a sort of as a break from the everyday. And then, ironically, what the artists tend to do is they tend to organize it in a way that's, you know, they see what's normal about it, or what's real, or what's true, or what they've already known, you know. And it's interesting, like the people are they're craving that. I suppose, like, there's all these like if you go to the Folk Alliance, there's all these singer-songwriters. There's so many of them, and they all have something, a little bit something to offer to the fan of that kind of thing. And I think I've tried to figure out what it is that draws people to it, because some of the songs are not so good. Some of the singers are not that great singers or players, and yet there's something there that draws people in, because I guess they want to see what creative people do, and they're dying for it themselves, I'd say. And I think there's an awful lot of our pastime, our day-to-day stuff that's not creative, and if we don't feed that, we feel deficient.
Creativity is ecology. We're eating fish, we were eating nuts, we were eating berries, we were probably eating a lot of insects like ants and things like that for many, many, many eons. And we finally started making a word mean those things, and then that word was kind of like grew on itself, and we developed more and more into that word and how it would stand for the object. So you didn't have to run find the hickory nut to say, we want some of these nuts to eat tonight. And the animals around us became influential in what we were learning to do. When we whistled, you know, all of these things that we said when we did these animal sounds were understood around us. But I think of this when I'm going into an urban school and singing, and I'm thinking, all of the things that I'm singing about are out in Florida wild areas, and will these kids understand what it's like when I say it's knee-deep, high, and rising? You know, have they ever been in the situation I'm singing about enough to know that that has value and that doesn't? That's just a little story that keeps it going. So when he gets into how influential the roar of a whale out offshore and all these things came into our being as a significant thing. Oh, I heard a wolf on the mountain, you know. Let's zip up the tent tonight, you know. So those kinds of little things that come from the wild, I think music brings them up in ways that we may not understand the significance of them. We know when we hear a train whistle in a song, you know, that always has its special meaning, clickety-clack of the railroad track and all that. So maybe as we have evolved to be more urban, and probably recently because we're getting our information from a speaker, not a voice, we have gotten to the point where we've lost our true reason for creating purposeful activities around the campfire or around the kitchen or around the homestead. We're off down there at the office. We're in New York. We're among 8 million people that are sitting here doing this, and nobody's doing this or shucking the corn or anything, you know? And our creativity diminishes.
I think in this day and age, with the way our technology is and the TV and the just being bombarded constantly by white noise of all kinds, whether it's television, radio, there's just noise around us constantly, and I think some people become sort of numb to it, and it stunts their creativity because everything that they do is being force-fed into their system, and maybe it keeps them from being creative in some way, or that they lose interest in being creative, or don't have the need to be creative. And if there's not any need or want to be creative or have a say some kind of result from it, their goal, then there's no interest in it.
They know electricity. They know how to go loud, and everybody goes, and you're saying, well, they do know their electric instruments, how to make it go wow. And I told somebody, I said, okay, gang, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get me a foot pedal for my banjo and have it go wow, and do Foothill Special, wow, and just let it roar, or just hit the strings and let it go, and then all the kids will like me. I'll be cool, man, and I can dress like Tina Turner. I wanted to do like Tina Turner, dress like her and do Grandpa Jones's songs and rap. They call it, ooh, that old Mountain Dew, ooh, ah, ooh. All this going on, a bunch of girls jumping around, everybody. Then them that refuse it are few. Boom, boom, you know, that'd be fun. Here I am, 74 years old, acting like that.
Also gets into how words replaced objects, so that when we quit talking about a jug of honey in our hand and started just seeing something sweet that's in a bottle written out, we lost that physical cognizant thing of honey comes from bees. Bees got a hive. Hive has to exist in a tree, and if you don't have trees, you don't have hives. And so you got a person that don't see the value of keeping the forest green because they're not making that connection to the forest. And that's every generation that's lost a little bit more. And this whole original creativity when the word started being used that way doesn't exist hardly anymore. So, you know, it hadn't evolved at the same, it's generic, yes, it has evolved generically, but it hasn't evolved in the picture of what the person is seeing. I oftentimes think about this in a bluegrass sense when you use Blue Ridge Mountain blues or any number of things that has to do with the geographical. You think of mountains with trees on them and stuff rather than snow-covered Alps or something. You know, you think of the place when you hear the lyric. And from that creative point of view, when you've got an urban population that doesn't know that bees make the honey and the honey comes from the trees then, and so the bluegrass lyric that knows about the bear and the honey and the bumblebee and all those things doesn't have a useful landing spot in an urban mind that's just totally urban.
One of the biggest changes that has happened in music in the last 50 to 75 years, well really in the last 50 years that this has happened, music went from all music having a little bit of a syncopation and a swing beat to it. Somehow it all went to a straight beat. And I wonder if industrialism had something to do with that. That, you know, the human heart beats to a syncopated beat. You know, boom, 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 da da doom, da da doom, da da da. You know, we have a natural swinging rhythm to what we do, and we're not machines. Once we put energy out, that energy is gone until we get more energy. So if you hit something and you just let your hand like double hit it, you know, there's a go, you know, there's like this syncopation to it. I noticed that when I built a brush pad for an upright bass, kind of like how Kent Blanton uses, like the old guys did before they had drums on the Opry. And you can't play a straight beat on it. It's the weirdest thing. It goes, and all you're doing is you pluck the note and then you kind of throw your wrist out and then you pull it back and you get like 3 notes out of that. And it has this, and you're just going doom ba, but it goes doom da doom da doom da doom. Just the natural decay of rhythm in that energy swings, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think music used to have a swing to it just because that's a natural rhythm. It's a natural thing, and it has a bounce, and it leads you into the next note, and I find it very invigorating. Music with a straight beat tires me. It makes me so exhausted. And I think that it's because it's just like getting hit over the head with like a jackhammer or just some kind of electrical thing that just goes, and there's no syncopation or break to it. It's just this constant mechanical beating over the head. But I think that a lot of people naturally feel that. I think to a certain degree we all do. I probably naturally feel that. Like I was saying with the rhythm in the car with the squeaky belt and all that, you know. Like there's so many things in life now that are these straight rhythms and these straight beats. Like you look at country music, how you know, the train beat kind of became a popular beat to put behind like a bluegrass type of like a fiddle tune or like a hoedown, like a, you know, Flatt and Scruggs when they would have a snare with brushes, you know, they'd be like like a train. But even there's a little bit of a syncopation in that. For some reason, the straight beat kind of just took over everything. I read an interview with Keith Richards once, and he said he thought it was because of the electric bass. He said that in the early days of rock and roll, the rhythm section was, you know, a swing drummer and a swing upright bass player, and you know they, and it was like that for the first few years. Well, you know, the electric bass was originally invented with, you know, Western swing and jazz musicians in mind, but what it ended up doing was because it was so easy for guitar players to play it, and this is all Keith Richards' theory. This is from this interview I read. The bass player in the band went from being a bass player to being whoever the worst guitar player was, because the guy who was the good guitar player ended up being the lead guitar player, and then they said, well, we need to have a bass player. Here, why don't you play bass? And so they gave the bass to the guy who was the least good of the 2 guitar players in the band, and he took a pick and didn't know how to play a walking line, so he just started going do 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 do, and then the drummer stopped going do do do. He started playing da 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 da. And it's a cool sound. I mean, you definitely feel something when you hear that. And, you know, for that being Keith Richards' theory, man, there's a lot of Stones songs that go. But maybe he's onto something there. You know, maybe just rock and roll in general made music something that just kids could do in garages, and it wasn't. You know, the early guys that played rock and roll records, a lot of them were Western swing musicians, or they were swing big band guys. You want an ice cream?
A lot of music right now, I'll hear one tune and I'll just go, wow. That was just like taking 3 different types of food, dumping it all in one plate, stirring it together, it tastes terrible. But, you know, the people that are doing that are really searching hard to find some new thing. It's almost like clear, you know, it's probably better to clear stuff away, you know. I haven't heard a new form, like here's a new, this put together with that, and mostly it's about personalities. You know, the instrument's probably irrelevant. You get the right group of 4 or 5 people together that learn to speak together. It doesn't matter if they're banging on garbage can lids with mallets, you know, I mean, it could be brand new and amazing, and, you know, or whatever instruments they choose to use or happen to be using. So I don't know how that happens. I know it's going to happen, you know.
I think you have those sort of nodal points every once in a while throughout history where a bunch of people who are listening to music all awaken to other possibilities. You know, I mean, you can really see it in classical music as you watch it, you know, changing from Bach on into the, you know, to Mozart to Beethoven and onward into 12-tone music and all the, you see it really starts, well, Bach was not simple, but in general the music will start simple and get more and more complex and hit these incredible peaks and then get quite complicated and often sort of complicate itself out of existence, which is something that kind of happens. Classical music hasn't complicated itself out of its existence, but it certainly made life difficult for itself by the music that became, because everybody had already done all this great consonant music and nobody could think of anything else to do except make it weirder and weirder to cut new ground. And the same thing happened in jazz. Exact same thing. I mean, starting with Louis Armstrong, it was just this very danceable, pop, fun music that anybody could sing and play and dance. And then it got more and more complex as it went on into swing and went on into bebop, until finally they were playing free music, which was 12-tone, once again, you know, just very, very modern music that most folks couldn't relate to. And you go back to Earl Scruggs, you know, the Earl Scruggs is like Louis Armstrong. He's playing so simple, his whole deal, I mean, it's genius, just the way Louis Armstrong is genius, and they're heralded as people that have changed the face of music. But they had something so clear, and you think about Earl Scruggs' mom saying, I can't follow the song, you got to make sure I can understand the melody, you know, and they're not thinking about that when they're writing 12-tone music, you know. And so far, they're getting further and further from mom, who likes the music. They're getting to where only people that can follow, you know, really, that have studied the music so much that they're tired of it, can be excited by this new crazy stuff that people are coming out with. And so there's a point where it gets to be too much for people, and that's the point when the music can sometimes suffer. And so anyway, I was a little concerned that might start to happen in bluegrass, where we might be hitting that point. I don't think we're quite there, although there's some signs, and people like me haven't necessarily helped all the way. But pushing it forward and trying to grow it and trying to find new things to do with it are really good. You know, jazz always grew when someone came into it from outside, like when Coltrane went out and studied Indian music or classical music and brought it, or you know, Charlie Parker, you know, learned to play in all 12 keys. It always improved the music. That period would have incredible growth, and it didn't necessarily lose people. You know, but later on, so you start thinking about it as a timeline. You know, you can't blame anybody for where they come in the timeline, and what they choose to add to the thing, right? So you can't blame Charlie Parker for being the genius he was, even though it might have led to the music going so, you know, atonal that, you know, 20 years later, maybe not even 20 years later, that it lost a lot of people, and the music itself lost people. So if you look at the whole, if you could say here's the beginning, here's the end of the music, you could just celebrate all of the stops along the way, and you wouldn't be so concerned about, you know, where it's gone, like looking back at an ancient race or something. That's the thing. So, I mean, you listen to Punch Brothers, and you see them struggling with a lot of those same issues, like how to be super creative, how to not do what's already been done with the incredible facility that they have, but also they're trying to figure out how to not lose people, and they've already skirted that. They've already seen that they can lose people and not, and you know, all this hard work and developing and creative stuff is wasted if it doesn't connect. So I think as an artist, that's almost as important as being creative, is that element that makes people want to come hear you, makes you reach out and connect with people.
Both sides of that are hard to equalize, but when they come together, when that's a harmonic balance of creative output and creative reception, when that comes together, all of a sudden you have a big bang, you know.
Just on a basic level, I believe in music that is memorable and that you can sing afterward, you know, after you hear it. I think that's, you know, the most potent music, the most powerful.
You think about somebody like the Beatles, you know, they're the greatest, one of the greatest examples of just tremendous creativity output, creative output that had tremendous creative reception, and it all kind of lined up. It lined up to the masses of people and still does to this day. And I think once it reaches that sort of harmonic balance, it never goes away. It doesn't ever become irrelevant or not as good as it was in the day. That's why we have all these standards of anything, you know, whether it's political, artistic, creative design. You know, we're surrounded by creative design. Everything that we have is designed by somebody in a creative place. You know, think about the guy that invented the wheel. He started with a square block. And he goes, you know, if I take these corners off of this, it'll be smoother. Now, there's a creative idea. Okay, so he takes the corners off, and all of a sudden he's got this thing that moves, it rolls. But how does he improve upon his creative genius that he just created the wheel? Okay, how do we improve on the wheel? Well, you know, if we can make it so that it just works smoother, we need to get something in there that makes it smoother, that turns smoother. Grease. Let's find something that's honey or grease or something to make it turn, you know. That is, you know, the creative output, or at least input into something. And that's the hardest thing in the world, is to improve on something that's been sort of basically creatively set in stone.
That's something that I think you develop and you get better with over time, and it's become really I think it's one of the most important aspects of writing a song or creating a piece of music or whatever. I mean, it's all those aspects of dynamics, the builds and the swells, and then the falling, the bottom falling out, the pauses, the pregnant pauses between the line that keeps a listener just sort of hanging on to your next thought, and then you pull them along, and then there's all those little tricks, you know, and you kind of develop them over time, and I think some of my songs probably, if you just read them, they may not even be that good to read, but when you add the presentation and the theatrics to it, then you have something, you know.
When you do something that's just a little bit different, you know, that maybe you held a phrase out longer than what you thought maybe the normal way of going at it would be, and then when that stuff starts and you start thinking, you know, this turned into a pretty good little old tune here, you know.
Beyond that point is like what they would call an event horizon, meaning you don't know what's beyond it. It's not even describable. It's just...
I just want to know more, because I'm still awed by it. I still can hear something or see something or hear somebody play or hear a song or hear a group of people play, and I go, whoa, what is that? You know, to still be inspired and awed by it. How do I get into that? Where's the middle of that? What's that about? It's like, ooh, you know, it's like, ooh, look, tables, legs.
When I started, you know, playing more with people, and I feel like where I started improvising and really, you know, maybe creating something of my own, is when I would back up a vocalist, you know, because you can learn a song note for note, and you can learn some licks note for note. But I really like that creativity that happens when you're backing up a vocalist.
It's real easy to overplay, especially the fiddle. And so I asked Del Potter, I said, how do you know what to do and do just the right thing at the right time? And he said, well, you have to listen to the lyrics.
It's much better if I can get into the flow of what the singer's doing and not just play the stuff I've learned, you know.
A lot of times people like a song, and they like it so much they want to record a song, but the song just ain't right for them. You know, that happens with everybody. It happens with me. It happens with everybody. You know, you really like this song and you love singing it and stuff, but then it's really not that good a song for you, and that's where your producer is supposed to say, hey man, you know, we all like this song, but it's not for you. You know, go to something else. That and trying to play something that's over your head, you know, I mean, and something that's not in your style.
Make me laugh, make me cry, make me think, feel, make me get mad, make me do something, make me have an emotion. And my favorite artists do that. Whether it's the, you know, the sad, mournful lyrics of someone like the Louvin Brothers of When I Stopped Dreaming, the worst I've ever been hurt in my life. What a powerful line.
Really?
It's just right there.
I mean, when I first was into bluegrass, I was definitely, that's it, I don't like anything else, that's all I like, you know, and then as I got older, it's like, well, you know, God, I really love Ray Charles. I really love Miles Davis, you know, and to me it's just all one thing, you know. I love, you know, Ralph Stanley and Ray Charles and Merle Haggard. I mean, those are just three of my favorite singers, you know, because they all do the same thing, they're just doing it differently. They make you think about the lyric, and they take you somewhere else.
Universal emotion.
You know, music is a powerful thing, and you can't always put your finger on how it's making you feel. And sometimes, you know, I think that's why you hear on all these source recordings people, you know, hooting and hollering and shit. I mean, it's whatever the music compels you to do at that moment. And I think those kind of reactions are really healthy. It's like, that's why, you know, I find that at the festival when I hear somebody's break that I love, I'll just scream out instead of clapping, because, I mean, everybody claps, it's kind of compulsory. Everybody's just, I mean, if you really heard a good break, just give it a woo! Why not?
The early stuff with Tony or Grisman, you know, they had a language. Tony has invented a language, right? So I had to invent a language that worked with his language. How do you talk in that language to somebody that's talking like no one else does or has? So, I mean, we have just like real life experience. Something happened that hadn't happened before, or, you know, and because he was unique and I played bass since I was a little kid, but I grew into another something with him, you know, especially with him, you know. Just because the bass is such an extension of the guitar, you know. So we really could rally and interact, and a lot of it just happened, us having fun. Hey, you play the downbeats, I'll play the backbeats. I mean, we would do stuff just to like brothers punching each other in the arm to see if you could make it bruise, or, you know, keep laughing about it the whole time, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of challenges learning music that was way over our heads at the time. So there was a challenge, but basically, I was just saying, we lived it, you know, just like early bands in bluegrass did. That's Flatt, Scruggs, Monroe, all unique people, true to themselves, living their life in the music, no different. They developed a language, because they met or because they were who they were, or a combination. And I think it's rare. I mean, I really appreciate the fact that I did get to do that. It happens, then it doesn't happen, then it happens, and it doesn't happen.
Man, there was just something about it that said more and done more for your spirit than what they done melodically, what they did with a lick, what they did. You heard something that drew you to them.
I found myself in tears, you know, just playing along to simple tunes. I found myself crying playing the Golden Slippers the other day because we just played that tune for like 5 minutes straight. Hadn't played it in a couple of years. Great tune. And the vibe was just right there. It just really like drove home the point. Whatever that song means, I understood it right then.
What did you capture, you know, in your heart that made you feel that way to make it come out like that?
Well, when it feels honest.
The feel is everything. One time, I remember when Jack Clements was doing a session, and he just misunderstood what the question was, I think. But somebody said, "Jack, it doesn't. The feel's not right." And he said, "Well, we'll overdub it." Well, you can't overdub the feel.
You know, when you believe the person. You know, a lot of times you just don't believe people when they're singing stuff. Like, I'm not buying it. You know, that you don't seem genuine. You know, I think that's one of the main things. It's just, are they living it? You know, or even if they're not living it, is it believable? Could they live it? You know.
I think it's proven to them more by a feeling that they have about you than what you told them. You know, because look, we live in a very cynical world nowadays, and people are just as apt to tell you anything, you know, to either satisfy you or for some kind of gain or for something. And I do believe that when people see a genuineness and feel a genuineness in their spirit, you know, about who and what you are and what you're about, I really honestly and truly think that speaks volumes to people.
And it's really recognizable within some artists where you can feel the depth of their connection. Something happens when they sing, like Daryl Scott, who sings, and you can feel literally my insides start churning. Like I'm feeling his spirit go inside of me and like pull me where it's magnetically, I'm just like connected to him.
So in that way, it's got to do something to me here. Otherwise, I'm not interested in it. And it could be delivery. It may be as simple as that.
And then, you know, the other thing would be just the ability to paint a simple picture.
Usually if I see pictures, when I hear somebody sing songs or play tunes, that's a good sign.
Give me an image that I can visualize. Then I can go with you. And the coolest thing about that is that the image that I paint in my mind means one thing. You're going to listen to my painting, my word image, and to you it's going to be a totally different place. You know, if I'm going to paint this meadow in Anadarko, Oklahoma, and I know exactly how I see it in my mind, but you're seeing a totally different thing, but it's just as cool because it's your image. And at that point, now we're sharing it, you know. Now you're going on your journey and I'm going on mine, and we're taking the trip together.
You know, just through little details, little words that paint a picture in your head and get your imagination going, you know, because I think that's, people sort of fill in the rest with their own imagination. So if you have a song that can get people's imagination going as well, you know, so they're participating in the songwriting process as well. Every time they listen to it, you know, they conjure up images of either what they're talking about or what particular scenario means to them, or their version of a particular scenario. That's the stuff I like.
And those are the things that stick with people. And, you know, and there's only a few of those, really. And really there's only one. There's love. And then everything else, it just depends on what angle you are looking at love, or coming from love. But it's all, love's right in the middle of all of it. And if you're dealing with that, then someone is coming from that same angle, looking at love just like you are, somewhere, you know. And chances are a whole lot of people are.
As a songwriter, Daryl Scott's one who just really seems to tap into the stuff that I'm concerned about, or he plays the kind of music I want to hear. He talks about things that I understand, but he broadens it.
And you can feel literally my insides start churning. Like I'm feeling his spirit go inside of me and like pull me where it's magnetically, I'm just like connected to him.
I think the magic is in that pushed place. Instead of that, hey, I've practiced the shit out of this, and I practice it so much, I'm now performing it in front of you, and you should be in awe of all the practice I put in on that. That's cool to a point. But the magic music, to me, the more magic, the unexpected magic can happen out of that place you had no idea of. And that's the pushing boundary thing that I like to do.
When I was writing one of the songs, Things I'll Never Do, it's a song that I think was one of the first songs I wrote only from the truth, only without trying to be a creative rhymer, or it was all just true lines that had happened from my life. And then when I met with Matt Rawlings, who helped me finish writing that song, I had written it like a bluegrass song, and he plays piano and understands music in a different level than me. And when he played piano, I was like, why don't you make it into a ballad? And we started working on it. We really spent about the next 6 hours completely diving into what this song really means and where it comes from within me. And I just bawled the entire day. I like walked out of that room completely drained emotionally and completely exhausted, just because of the level of depth we got into and the understanding. And that made me realize how much you really have to give if you want, how much you have to give of yourself to the muse or to the creation. You have to give all of yourself emotionally, all of yourself honestly. What Joni Mitchell says is songwriting is like taking your dirty laundry and hanging it out on a clothesline in your front yard for everyone to see. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that, just being completely naked, completely vulnerable, completely exposed.
Listen to what your heart really wants you to do, you know, because everybody has that something that they wish they were doing or that they hope that they do someday. And I would just say, just do that, just do it. And you don't know what's going to become of it or if anything's going to become of it, but I think if you do it, you won't regret that you didn't. And most of the time something comes of it, you know.
Banjo playing is probably the closest thing to religion. Music is the closest thing to religion for me. And I find my way through music.
As a group, as a whole unit, without me, him, her breakdowns, we all kind of simultaneously experienced this thing.
You know, this is fun. This is exciting. You see the puzzles start to come together. You don't know sometimes what the picture of the puzzle is. Then you start to get a little glimpse of it, and that drives you even further.
There's creativity going on constantly here. There's hundreds of songs being written here day after day after day. How many of these songs get heard? Not many of them. How many songs get recorded and get remembered? A lot of them. How many songs get recorded and not remembered? Even more. You know, again, this is where commerce and art and creativity, again, chase each other. You can talk to songwriters and they'll say, well, I've written hundreds of songs, and hundreds that you'll never hear. But I wrote 5 really, really great songs that everybody loves and sold millions of records. And it allows me to do what I want to do. And that's not right or wrong, because, you know, music touches people's lives in different ways. But, you know, technologically speaking, it's never been more creative, the way you can do things. But that kind of helps people that are maybe less creative, and puts it in the hands of a creative person. You take somebody who's not so creative and make them sound or be that way. I guess you could say that. I'm not going to name any names, but I don't think that you can be in the music business in this town and not be creative in some way. You're trying to figure out, you know, number one, how to find a good song, or how to present a song in a creative, good way that people are going to receive and understand and get, and that will create good commerce for you, you know, because you're in this business. It's a terrible thing of chasing it around, but I think diversity is the main thing, and that's what they're trying to do here, is make the music so that it's accepted on a higher level of diversity, rather than being so genre specific, and that's difficult, you know, because there's some people out there that wallow in their genre of music, and they're very good and creative and they're the best at it, but they'll never get out beyond it. And then there's people who are just hugely commercially successful, and there's a lot of creativity behind that success, and that's figuring out how to creatively get to the people who respond to that creativity, whatever it is. And again, it's easy to make judgments on anybody, especially anybody who's successful. They're the first ones that get attacked, you know, for being non-creative. Well, believe it or not, they created something, and they created something that was very successful, which in a nutshell is really what we all really want, you know. And you can say, well, that guy, that's a terrible song, or that is terrible singing, or that just isn't any good. Okay, well, it's hugely successful. What's bad about it? Doesn't mean that any of those elements, or whoever provided those elements, isn't creative, you know. Integrity and those kind of opinions are all subjective, and everybody has a different level and a different sort of perception of them. And some people just live in that world. They have to be driven by, you know, commercial success or money or whatever. They will find a creative way to make that music successful, and that's a creative process. If you don't want any part of that, and you just want to create really good music, that's great, and good luck, you know, because it's hard to survive at that. On some level, we all want a little commercial success, a little. We want to bring something home, have a home, buy a house, have a car, raise a family, feed them, whatever it is, you know. We're driven by, you know, being commercial on some level and being creative and inventive on another. And it's a tough thing to balance out and be happy.
Sometimes to get creative with an instrument, you need to put a capo on it to make it sound another way, to guide you in another direction, or play an instrument that you don't play very often.
The first thing that comes to mind was hello bird, is that so the first thing that you made me think of was a musical meeting with some musicians from Madagascar, and specifically a percussionist named Mario, and he played the shaker, and he played it in a beat that it was a glass. It was a shaker, like a tin can filled with glass, and he had a way that was, you know, like, and it had a sound that, for me, was so close to the way that I'm scratching and playing percussion on the fiddle. I thought, wow, it seems like I should be able to do that. That is, I want to play my fiddle like he's doing that. It's like, it's almost the same sound. And I tried to do it, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have the technique. He was doing groups of 3, and I just knew how to do groups of 2. And so what happened is it forced me to rethink how I was doing that, and I searched for a new sound in order to make a pattern of 3 that I could then use to emulate what he was doing. So the creativity, the moment there was finding inspiration from another instrument.
I have a lot of ideas that have just started as ideas, and sometimes when I revisit them, those ideas, they change. They change the whole song, the whole. That's a couple of different ways. It's I'm in a funk, and I got to get out of this. So I know that if I pick up my guitar, and sometimes I'll pick up my mandolin. I'm not a very good mandolin player, but I'll pick up my mandolin as a completely different shift in my whole thought process, because I got to approach it differently, and I'm struggling with it, and then out of that struggle, I'll get a different kind of excitement, and a different kind of groove, and a different kind of. The way I'm approaching that is completely different. I'm coming from a jazz type, funky type, away from the guitar. My guitar is more like fiddle type, blues type thing, and I set the mandolin aside for this is what I'm going to do on this. I'm going to listen to some Charlie Parker, and I'm going to get my inspiration from that and transfer it to the mandolin. And it's fun, it's clumsy, it's awkward, but it's challenging, but it's still fun. It's really fun. It's just a completely different shift.
So it's shifting.
I think I really just sort of sit down and try to give myself the time and the space to come up with something by whatever means necessary, which often is just kind of like rambling musically for a while. And yeah, it usually comes from actually playing and sort of like trying things out. And sometimes it can be freeing to do that on a different instrument than what you're like actually used to and have the facility to really play, because then sometimes I find that it's just all these tunes that I know that are sort of popping out at me when I don't want them to.
A different guitar sound, you know, go with the gut string and try to pull something from that.
Over the years I've found that finding different tunings on the instrument, that's been really good to open up a new path for me to be creative in, or finding on my junking sort of traveling journey, finding old instruments that have inspired me, like a ukulele that I just thought was adorable. I was like, I have to play that, and then fixing it and messing around with it. And because I don't know all the chords and all the notes, I come up with my own, you know, and create my own chords.
So I think there are like little doors of creativity in your brain, little segments that once you start maybe taking a little different road and not to keep on doing the same old thing, even though that formula may have worked for you in the past and been very successful for you, it's just still good to explore the unknown.
I think it's something that we should allow to control us. And hopefully, when things are happening, we can be a vessel for that soul to be able to have its time here on the planet this time around.
I am really interested in taking photography, and really interested in visual art. So I go to, I'll go to a museum, and I'll put on headphones, and I'll take my little notebook with me, and I'll try and find some music that might fit the situation, the vibe that I want to be in when I'm walking around, a certain part of the museum, and just let it, my mind go wherever and wander around and be inspired by that. If I get an idea, I write it down. I do generally carry a little notebook in my back pocket, or sometimes it's your phone, but when you have those ideas, put them down, even if it's a tiny little, funny phrasing of words or a pun or something like that. I'm even writing stuff like that down just because at the moment it was, it made me smile, or I got a spark of something. So capturing those little moments, using the world around you as inspiration, basically, and then finding ways to just maybe apply that, think about your whatever your creative outlet is a little bit differently. So.
Thinking back to when I was doing printmaking and drawing and photography and some painting classes and playing music all the time, to me it seemed like the more I learned about one aspect, it helped the other, whether it was music or cooking or some sort of visual arts. The more depth I got in one, somehow it transferred to the other.
I guess it just comes down to being open and receptive enough, to that power. And I don't know what it is. I know it's there because I know that any one of us can make something, can create something.
It's really good to find a community of people that you can connect with and are doing creative things that you also want to do, because it gives you a reason to keep going. Sometimes I've gotten really into a certain art form or music form or something and work on it a lot at home, but I eventually don't keep going with it because there's no next step, no one to take it to or anything. And especially when I started playing bluegrass, it became all this work that I'm doing on this and love that I'm putting into this and time I get to take to my friends who also really care about this, and we get to, kind of feed off each other's creative energy, and it's always made having a purpose and a community like that to direct your energy towards is really helpful. So I'd say find other people to collaborate with, or at least meet with and do your art with.
And I know it's been said 1,000 times, crawling, walking, running, riding. We all of us at some point had to figure all of that out. So we have the skill, it's there. It's just you have to get past the I can't, you have to get past the fear of things. You have to be okay to fall down and pick yourself back up and just keep going it just as much as you did it when you were at the crawling stage. You fell, you got up, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So wherever in one's life that one cut that off or doesn't believe that they have that, you have to go back and figure out, okay, just go back to that and go, okay, I did do that. Look at kids around you. Go look at a playground. Watch kids. Watch the little ones. Their necks are up there. God, I'm good. Jesus, I'm gonna get there. It's all in us. I mean, there's no pill to take, or there's nothing to do. It's all. That's what I'm saying. It's all here. It's all aware. You can watch it everywhere.
And what's interesting about like art, the stuff that I like the most, it seems so. A lot of times it'll seem so idiosyncratic or sort of peculiar to the person that made it. Their own personal detail will be in there, and it's all about very specific things, and yet
it's so attuned to a certain subject that it reveals the whole world in it. Like the whole of the universe is just kind of there in this little painting of an Indian or something. It's amazing.
With bluegrass, usually it was a bunch of individuals, you know, and the greatest individual of all was the guy that created the music. And so it was an ensemble music, but when it came your time to take the lead, you really had to stand out, you know, and you didn't want to play it like anybody else had played it. You wanted to have your own thing going on it, and you wanted to come up at least to the level of the other people you were playing with, you know, so you really had to get with it, and even better if you could outdo them a little bit. So everybody was trying to push each other, you know, and go in new directions. And that's a real tight wire to walk, because you don't want to do something that's just outside the style of the music, just for flash or show. You want to dig deep into the music and do something that's really, really strong and good and emotional, you know. It's one great thing about bluegrass is it's an emotional music, you know. It's supposed to make people holler and cry, and, you know, it's supposed to get them in the heart and in the brain.
Even if you don't play music or you're not really into music, it can hit you.
It's a feeling, you know. It's not just the notes, it's a feeling that those people in the audience will get, and it either happens or it doesn't, it seems like. And it's hard to do with just an instrument. It's also maybe even harder to do with an instrumental that's not a barn burner or something that's, you know, just theatrical. But there's nothing wrong with that, you know, like a fast fiddle tune. But something that's accessible to people. It's not just academic.
If I can't feel it, I mean, that's what I go by. It's not brain work. There are a lot of magnificent technicians that play music that I don't play. I don't have the technical skills to play because I'm not drawn that way. What turns me on musically is not necessarily as complicated as what some people desire. If there's no emotional impact when I hear something, I have a tendency to turn around and walk away from it.
You have to feel like it's something worthy of their time and their attention, and so in order for it to be that, then it has to move you as well, or it has to move me. So if I start getting a little bored with it, then I'll switch it up a little bit just to excite myself.
When you learn somebody else's song, you try to learn it like they're doing it. You really want to do that best. You want to do it like they're doing it because that's how you've learned it first. When you write your own, it may gradually evolve.
Sometimes people like the old way better, but that's okay, you know, because people usually just like the way that they know it, the way they heard it first. Now the other people that just heard it this new way, well, they'll say, oh, that's the way it goes. That's how I heard it. So I don't know. I don't know when you quit or if you ever do, you know.
Monroe, a good example of him. When I first went to work with him, I worked in his farm for a few years, and what happened, when I would go out there, I'd see him standing. He was always this icon statue of a human being, you know, like John Wayne or something, you know. And he'd always wear the cowboy hat, and I've seen him like look out across his farm there in Goodlettsville and just like he owned the world, you know, and just this proud guy. And I'd see him look out, and I'd think, man, I bet right now in his mind he's creating some kind of music with a zittar and a cello or something. You know, I was just thinking, man, what is he thinking? And I got to know him, and I realized he was wondering what kind of pie they had at the Mason's Motel. You know, and I realized he wasn't really thinking like that. He wasn't thinking all these deep, I'm creating music thoughts like I was thinking. He was creating, he was living
each moment. He lived by the moment.
You can feel that spirit really flowing through you when you're in the moment, you know.
And I feel like as I started listening to more musicians and the players that I gravitated to were really good improvisers, you know. I mean, you can tell when somebody is playing something they've rehearsed or worked up, and you can tell when they're more in the moment. And I feel like when you're in the moment, and especially when I got older and I started listening to jazz and Miles Davis stuff, I mean, that's obviously a huge part of that music also, although it is a huge part of bluegrass too, I think. That you're walking the plank, whatever you want to call it, but you're leaving yourself and you're grabbing onto something else. And there's more energy that happens, you know what I'm saying? It's a musical energy or creative energy, whatever you want to call it.
Bill Monroe, I guess, was the one who always stood still, and he could fire anybody who smiled in his band. Did you know that? Oh yeah, he'd fire. We used to laugh at that. The Stomans would show up to where Bill Monroe was playing. We were playing there too, like a festival or something. And we'd sit and watch him, but every one of his band just stood there like a zombie. They couldn't smile. And I went over to one of them and he got off the stage. And I said, how come y'all don't move around? He said, Bill Monroe, Bill don't want us to smile. So I got tickled. I said, I guess it's because, you know, maybe some of his bands had bad teeth.
I remember one time I was out at this guy's place at a picking out there, and he was sitting on a porch in a rocking chair, and I went up and I asked him, I said, let's see, I think I asked him, I said, you want some potato salad or something? He said, I'll have some fried potatoes. And I said, well, there aren't any fried potatoes. And I said, you want some ice cream? Yeah, I'll have a piece of pie. And it's whatever you ask him, you know, he'd go, just want you to do something else, you know. And then I finally said, I said, would you like some coffee? And he goes, yeah, give me about that much coffee and about 6 sugars in it. And just like, but yeah, I mean, it was something else.
I remember one time on a session, he said to me, buddy, he said, Kenny cut his hand and I wanted you to be the fiddle player on this. And he said, now, so-and-so, all of his band members, he says, they were all against you. He said, I said, no, I want you. And he says, you're the only one that I've ever had that could do what I wanted. And of course, I didn't have that recorded, but something similar, like you say, when I worked with him about a year, and Billy Joe Foster was getting under the weather, and so he wanted me to learn Bill's tunes, and Bill was there, and you know, Billy played him the way Bill liked him, and so Billy was showing them to me, and it was during that little, I just had my little cassette tape so I could remember what he was, so I could play it back, and sure enough, learn it real good. I was like this with Bill, and I loved working with Bill. Now, he wouldn't let Richard Green do fills. He just made Richard just play chops behind him. I don't know why that was, but anyway, I worked a lot with Richard and Kenny, all of his fiddle players. You know, in the early days, he didn't pay real good, and so he'd have a different fiddle player. It seemed like every month or every other month, and I worked with a lot of them. I can't remember. Gene Lowlinger was the name of one of them. One time we did a tune. Bill called it Bluegrass Swing, and so I learned the harmony with Gene. And one night Gene wasn't there, but he wanted me to play that, and I said, Bill, I don't know. I'm not sure of the melody. I said, all I know is my harmony. He said, well, just play that. So he announced the number, and I was talking to David Greer. David Greer happened to have a recording of that particular spot way back in the early 60s. And anyway, it's called Bluegrass Swing. And I remember years later, Bill said, do you remember how that goes? He says, I'd like to record that. But we never did get a chance to record it. But I did work up Road to Columbus with him but I didn't make the session. Kenny Baker did, and Kenny changed it from what I had originally. But Kenny plays so good. I mean, it's probably better the way Kenny did it. But I still remember how Bill wanted to do it, and it was completely different than the way it ended up being. See, originally, he wanted me to play the octaves. That was octaves, and then it was a major seventh, a C, even though he went to the 4 chord. Bill heard a lot of stuff like that, but when Kenny cut it, he went da 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 da, and then he went to a 7th, which doesn't make sense because as a rule, if you're going to play a D7, that means you're going to go to G, right? But I mean that was more the Baker style, and that was fine. But it is, sometimes I'll show it to you the way Bill originally wrote it. I can just tell you my impression. Like when I remember we played Carnegie Hall, and it was me and Benny Williams playing the fiddles, and he was always teaching us fiddle players fiddle tunes. He loved the fiddle more than the mandolin, and I remember one tune. It was so complicated I couldn't get it, and at the time, as far as really, and he put it down on that tape we're talking about, and it's called what is the name of it? Can't think of the name of it. I almost thought of it, but it's probably the best tune on that whole CD. And Kurt might can tell you the name of it. Kurt engineered all that. Galley Nipper, yeah, I think that was the name of Galley Nipper. And anyway, but all of his life he would play us something that he wanted us to learn, and if we didn't like what we were playing, he'd say, no, that's not it. And finally, when we came up with something he liked, he'd say, that's it right there. That's exactly it right there. And so I want this lonesome and old-timey, I don't want no hot licks, is what he would tell us. But if you listen to his playing, it's do-da-da-da, you know, he's jabbing, he's playing jazz stuff, but he never realized he was playing jazz, you know what I mean? And occasionally I think back all kind of little things like it's how come you fiddle players never do this? And he played you know how you play San Antonio Rose double stops, da da da. Well, it was a lick like that, and then he'd say, how come you fiddle players never hit this, you know, F sharp up in 3rd position and a D note? He says, how come you fiddle players never do that? And I knew why I didn't do it, but I didn't want to go into a lengthy thing. See, if it's 2 fiddles, and I'm playing the double stops, I need to stay with 3rds. So I would go on up to that high D and A fourths, rather than, even though the melody's a D note, rather than doing it the easy way, because I don't want to throw the guy that's playing 3rd with me. See, but I didn't want to try to explain that to Bill. But in other words, he knew what he liked when he heard it, but you know, just like he thought that he invented minors. And so you don't want to say, Bill, minors have been around a long time. You didn't, you know what I mean, if he thought that. Sometimes, you know, he'd even pick up his guitar and show us things, and, you know, I'm the first one that ever played a minor. And, it was more or less just country growing up, you know, like Loretta Lynn would say country things and think country ways. You know, her mom liked to read your palm or read the tea leaves and stuff. It's just old-timey Kentucky stuff, and it's wonderful. Really, it's beautiful. That's fine. And it's just the way it was years ago. You know, people were odd a little bit, you know. And so everybody respects Bill so much and loved him. If you ask Kenny Baker, who wrote Jerusalem's Ridge, he'll tell you Bill did. If you ask Bobby Hicks, how about this tune? Bill wrote that. They have so much respect for him. So what I was saying, really, I hope I didn't say anything negative. I'm saying he did. He wrote them all. He wrote Road to Columbus. But all I'm saying is we had to do something to get his qualifications. When we finally did something, he'd say, that's it right there.
Bill Monroe was the type of person that, as a songwriter, to me, you know, he just drew on himself, you know, and that's, I think, most people that are songwriters, that's where they start. They start with their stories, their life, their experiences. And Bill Monroe was able to do that, you know. He has all these biographical songs. And what's amazing is that there's content in these songs that people either can really relate to or they understand and they react favorably to. Now, he was never a commercially, you know, hugely commercially successful artist, but he had a couple of songs that went beyond him and became, you know, hugely successful. And the best example is Blue Moon of Kentucky, which is one verse and one chorus. Okay, well, that gets back to what I was saying earlier about simplicity. It's so simple, yet it paints such a succinct picture, and there's no mystery in the song. It's just laid right out there. And a song like that can be done in any genre of music because it's just it's in its rawest form. It can be adapted to anything because it's that simple. So what happens? You know, he records this song as a waltz. Well, Elvis Presley takes it and he makes it into rock and roll, and that inspires a whole new movement and genre of music. Flash forward 50 years, and a guy named Paul McCartney, who was inspired by Elvis Presley and Carl Perkins and Bill Monroe, records the song again in sort of a tribute, and this thing sells millions of copies on a MTV Unplugged show. Amazing, you know. The song just lived for decades as something that was constantly recorded. And again, it was something that is very simple and easy to digest. And when it gets to that point, it's timeless. It just can continue on, and people are still doing it today. And that's a kind of, you know, that's part of that is luck. I don't know how intentional Bill Monroe was. You know, he could have wrote another verse to that song pretty easily. How did he know he was done? How did he know it was finished? That'd be an interesting question to ask him. Sure didn't need more. Sure didn't need less. It's just right. It's just right. And he might have just, he probably didn't have time. You think about it, you know, well, I got this verse and a chorus, let's just make this into a song. And they recorded it, and that's why it was done. It wasn't because the song was finished, but maybe because they had to record it, and that's all he had to record, and so they just made an arrangement of what he had to work with, and that finished the song for him. Interesting concept. And then it remained done forever. So, but you know, he was an interesting character. He was able to draw inspiration from so many things, not only his own life experiences and surroundings, but nature itself. He was able to just sit and listen in the quiet. You know, most of the times that I was ever around him, he was just very quiet, always listening to whatever was in his surrounding periphery. You know, whether it was nature, or dogs, or, you know, he could hear a song in that. He could make that into an inspiration for something he would play on the mandolin, or, you know, something that would start a song off, or, again, something he could build something around.
You know, I think it's expression, and ultimately I like forms of music that are about self-expression or about individual expression. Geez, finding jazz or bluegrass. Somebody like Bill Monroe, I mean, he's expressing his whole history, his whole upbringing, his whole culture, his whole take on music, you know. And it's not just, you know, it's a one-of-a-kind expression because he had a one-of-a-kind history.
Having been around him, when he's just sitting playing by himself, for instance, maybe before we would go on to play a show, listening to him just sort of doodle around on the mandolin. I remember that whatever it was he was playing, if you had taken one note out, it would interrupt the flow of phrases he was coming up with. He was improvising, but also in kind of a composition sense, and putting together his phrases or notes or patterns or whatever it is that is in his mind. And he came from such a deep place and such a passionate place and caring about what was right, the right way to him, the true way to play, that I think that added an extra just energy and an extra, this is the way to do it. And then the rest of it, the creativity part, the quality of what he came up with, I suppose you could call that talent, or but definitely earned from a lot of playing with other great players long ago, and players that learned, well, they were playing their life, playing out their life through their music, the way they lived, the hardships, the playing it the right way, the wrong way, how to sell it to the audience. All those things that seemed to work translated to people. And I think all that went into whenever he picked up a mandolin, whatever notes he played. All those things together, just in what he did, and that's one of the things I learned from him when I played with him, was cutting out, trimming away the fat, trying to get what's important.
You knew that the music meant more to him than just getting up there and acting like Bill Monroe, because it was a shtick, but Bill Monroe, he was real.
He has cogs, and they're arranged in a certain order. And then he has another idea, and he takes the cogs out and he moves them around. A lot of times, to me, it's the same pieces, but he puts them in different places. It's like taking a paragraph of words and you rearrange the words this way and they say one thing, and then you take the same words and you scramble them up and you put them in a different order, and then they say something else. To me, that's what I hear when I hear it played. This is, I recognize this phrase from over here. Well, this is this phrase, but now it's used as a prefix instead of a suffix. Now it's used as the theme for the song, and stuff is written around it. I've leaned more and more towards using that formula the last few years than not, because it works. It's not because, I've got as much Monroe as I want. I've changed the whole course of my life, so I figured that's reasonably substantial. I don't need any more. I don't want to go there and try to be him. There's a lot of things about him I didn't like, so why would I want to be that? But I think that formula, as I recognize it, works, so why not use it? People do it with all other kinds of business. Why not follow the people that were successful? The most useful period of time I spent working on recognizing the feel and Monroe's right hand was during Butch Robbins' record years ago, down at Center and Focus, and I had to play some twin with Bill and make an effort to blend. And it was, to me, it was all in the right hand. And it just got me thinking, instead of it being left hand oriented, how much there was in the right hand that I had completely missed. I think probably that it was just one recording session, trying to match a sound that I had been hearing and not recognized for what it was, and being compelled to sit and reproduce that mirror image of what I was hearing as best I could, made me aware of a lot more aware of tone, rhythm, time, just minor details.
The way I look at it now, I mean, he had all the symptoms. You know, shoebox full of pieces of paper in the bus with names, titles, a shoebox. That was his file. No, I'll tell you the truth. Bill Monroe was listening. He always listened. He listened to how other people interpreted sound. He listened really carefully. And then he let it all go. And he became a great source of energy for the world. But that man listened. He listened from the time he was a little boy, you know. And there's a story about Bill as a cross-eyed boy hiding under the porch. And he told me that story, and he told John Hartford that story. Well, think about it. How long did he stay under the porch, being a cross-eyed boy, afraid of people looking at him and laughing? Well, he couldn't see well, and he's under the porch, and what's he hearing? He's hearing people's footsteps up above him on the porch. You know, I mean, if that stayed with Bill Monroe through his whole life, that memory, well, how many times did it happen? You know? And I remember working with him, he always told me, watch the dancer's feet. We once rode on a hay wagon through the streets of New York City, drawn by a horse, playing music, sitting on this, there's pictures, we're all sitting on these hay bales. We're advertising the Carnegie Hall Folk Music Festival, which would also have us, the Stanley Brothers, and Muddy Waters. You know, that's when Ralph Rinsler was alive, the great collector of energies for folk music and bluegrass and Cajun music, every kind of music. We're riding along on that hay wagon, clip-clop, through the streets of New York City, and Bill is nudging me. He's going, play to the horse's feet. Play to the horse's feet. So we played those fiddle tunes, and Bill was happy. He didn't feel like that was any kind of dubious adventure, you know, like lip syncing or something. It was, you look at the pictures of him, he's so proud of us. Gene Lowinger, me, Don Lineberger, I think, maybe the band hadn't changed. It was still the first phase when I had joined. The spring of '65, maybe. The year of the first Bluegrass Festival. And there's Bill Monroe, and he's going, play to the horse's feet, Pete. Play to the horse's rhythm. Yeah. So he was always listening.
And I've watched him live by the moment, and I've learned to live by the moment like that, because he had a lot of joy in his life. I mean, you can look back and think he had some rough times, and he would have told you he had rough times, but he got to play his music, got to go all over the world, and he just, you know, had a lot of freedom that a lot of people didn't have.
In a nursing home, and he was in severe bad shape. Donna, my sister's a minister. She went over there and ministered to him, and he accepted Christ again. And tears, he told her to play his mandolin sitting there in the corner. And she got over there and she played for him, and she did a gospel song. And he was always, you know, he would always watch Donna, but he never did comment, you're good. Bill Monroe was never that type of a feller to come over and say, boy, I sure liked your picking. Unless she was a girl bass player. Oh well, shouldn't say that. But I think that's fun. I'm not bad-mouthing anybody, I'm just telling you how it is. Am I doing bad? There's stories out, okay? It's like war stories to each other. And nobody is bad-mouthing the other. And this way the old school used to be. They would talk about the other one, but it's a funny thing, they did. And it would keep their name going. You know, Scott says, don't get out there and be goody two-shoes, Ronnie, because people don't like anything you done good. You got to make up stuff and do stuff. So they'll say, did you know what Scott Stoneman said? You know what he did? You know, and so it's the way it was then. It was fun to play and be around your peers, and because then you can watch their little moods and their ways and then get a kick out of it. I'm telling things out of school I shouldn't tell. But anyway, if you was a girl bass player, he would follow you around, I guess, if you thought he needed one. He always had some girl playing the bass. And she'd stand there like a zombie, too. And it's usually a blonde. That's why I did my hair blonde for Bill. Oh, yeah. We all love Bill. Oh. Tears was running down his... Donna said the pillow got wet from his tears, and she got up and wiped his tears for him and prayed with him. Now, that's a Christian. That's a Christian way to do, isn't it? Bill Monroe, he sung a lot of Christmas and gospel, Christian songs and gospel, but I never heard him talk much about it. Of course, he wasn't much of a talker. He had told me one time I'm on a stage, and he told me, he said, you got some good-looking yams. And I didn't know what a yam was. I thought, what's that? It sure ain't the arthritis. He met my legs. That was found out.
At the end, he loses his farm, and I took him home one night, and he asked me, he says, Billy, what do you think about all this? It's in the newspapers, man. I lost me losing my farm and all. I said, it's just land. It's nothing. He said, you know what? That's right. He agreed. He said, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what, that ain't nothing. I said, no, it's nothing. I said, you know, what we've got is our music. This is what we have, and they can't take it away from us. And a week or so later, he got this tendonitis, and he thought he wasn't going to play again, and then he wept because he thought he might not be able to play. Now that's a true inspired man right there, because that's the most important thing to him, was who he really was that songwriter, musician, creator.